Miss USA and Miss Teen USA have surrendered their crowns within days of one another. 24-year-old Miss USA Noelia Voigt, the first Venezuelan American woman to win the title, announced her resignation earlier this week on Instagram. Citing the importance of making decisions that feel best for you and your mental health, and just 2 days later, the 17-year-old Miss Teen USA, UmaSofia Srivastava, ceded her 2023 title, writing on Instagram, "There are no beautiful surfaces without a terrible depth. I will always look back on my time as Miss New Jersey Teen USA fondly, and the experience of representing my state as a first-generation Mexican Indian American. I've decided to resign as I find that my personal values no longer fully align with the direction of the organization."
The organization has not responded to the Hill's request for comment, but the Miss USA and Miss Teen USA Instagram accounts issued a statement following the women's departures and said their title holders' well-being is a top priority. Last weekend, former social media director at Miss USA, Claudia Michelle, announced her resignation. She said being offered your dream job and seeing that it was anything but is so disheartening. Michelle said she had seen a decline in Voigt's mental health and disrespect towards Srivastava. She continued, "I feel the way management speaks about their title holders is unprofessional and inappropriate. I disavow workplace hostility and bullying of any kind." These announcements raise an obvious question: what is actually happening inside this organization, and are these beauty contestants an outdated concept where so much emphasis is placed on this preconceived notion of beauty? Beauty comes from the inside. You have to be healthy and happy. It sounds like there's a lot of hostility within the organization that would result in the social media account manager's resignation, Miss Teen USA and Miss USA.
Yeah, so apparently the reports are starting to come out now a few days after all of these three left their positions, that apparently the owners of the organization and the people put in charge were speaking negatively about some of the pageant winners within the organization and were really controlling what they were allowed to post on social media. There was a report that they weren't allowed to post about some of their personal advocacy projects, and they only had to do, or were only allowed to do, the official ones through the Miss USA and Miss Teen USA organization. But I think both of these young women are under NDAs, so I don't know how much we're actually going to learn about the real reasons why they left. But the Miss USA winner who resigned, in the first letter of all of the words in her resignation post on her Instagram, spelled out, "I am silenced." So she's doing like Taylor Swift code level messages to her fans to, I guess, kind of hint at what was really going on the inside.
Yeah, it reminds me of Oprah. Are you silent or were you silenced? But yeah, this comes after we had Maria, who is this beloved contestant, I think Georges is her last name, on The Bachelor this season. And she went on Call Her Daddy with Alex Cooper, and she said, "I was offered to be the Bachelorette, and I was doing these outfit fittings and all of this stuff. And then I had everyone around me like, you must be so happy to be in this position. It's such a coveted position to be the lead on this reality TV show. It's kind of like a pageant in some weird ways." But then she said, "I wasn't happy. Everyone was happy for me and was like, you must love being in this position, but it wasn't good for my mental health." And she decided not to take it. And she said she's very happy for Jen, the girl who's in the role now. But it's this interesting thing where, like, being Miss Teen USA, being Miss USA, it's this coveted thing. It sounds lovely. You get a lot of attention. Not all of it is positive. And is it really glamorous and happy from the inside, or do we just see it as that way from the outside? And I think a lot of people are starting to get really critical of, being the center of attention in that way for a beauty contest on reality TV. It's exploitative in some ways, although it is coveted, and it's a position of power. So when girls complain about it, it's kind of like, oh, but you get to be Miss Teen USA. And it's like, what's going on the inside?
Yeah, there was another report that Miss USA had been subject to quite a bit of sexual harassment when she was in the position, which I'm sure is not uncommon. And when she complained to the president, they basically didn't take her seriously. And so that was part of the reason for her departure as well. She's actually the first Miss USA in the history of the organization, the Miss Universe organization, to willingly relinquish the title. I think there have been a couple who they've been stripped of their title for some kind of scandal or some other reason. But the organization was purchased from none other than Donald Trump a few years ago by a billionaire Thai transgender woman by the name JKN. And the new owner came under fire shortly after buying the organization because there was a leaked video in which they essentially said that they didn't care about efforts to make it more inclusive, that wasn't what they were there for, which is kind of funny because part of the reason why people were excited about a transgender person buying the company was that they thought that would necessarily lead to more quote unquote inclusion, whatever that meant. And that turned out not to be the case. And I guess the question is, how much does this go back to really the ownership of the company and perhaps a culture that they've put in that makes it not a super welcoming place for the winners?
And we haven't touched on this at all, but it goes without saying that you hear this news. No one's like, not Miss USA. This couldn't possibly happen at beauty pageants. Because I think we all assess this now as they are sexualizing the women. It is all about looks. We have heard, behind the scenes audio of Donald Trump say you can grab them by the P word, you can do whatever you want. But there is this thing of we can't be surprised that this organization that's founded on objectifying women to some degree, it's almost like a dog show. It's like you walk them around, you assess how they look, and you make them do tricks or talents or whatever. It does feel kind of degrading. So on the one hand, it's like, no, we can't be surprised, but it's like, can we appreciate beauty in a way that isn't exploitative? And I think we can. I think everybody appreciates beauty. It's something we have in common, and it doesn't need to be something that degrades people. And I think that's the balance that needs to get struck here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I kind of think about some of the changes that were made to the Victoria's Secret fashion show, and it was mostly women that watched that because they really enjoyed seeing these women at their peak in these really beautiful lingerie sets. And although it was necessarily sexual because, again, you have half-naked women in lingerie, it was also generally a sort of unifying thing where women would get together and pop popcorn and watch the Victoria's Secret fashion show together. There was always excitement about who the musical guest was going to be. And so, I mean, sometimes we go too far in the other direction where we get rid of these things that actually women quite like and women want to participate in. So I think there's also the element too of, for the Miss Teen USA, she's obviously 17, she probably didn't know much better, but the Miss USA is 24 years old. I mean, at a certain point, you have to say that, you kind of know what you're getting into when you are willingly participating in an organization that does value you for your looks and perhaps to some extent, your charitable contributions or the advocacy that you do. But I guess I would want to know more about what her specific complaints were in regards to the toxicity before judging too harshly on the organization as well, because kind of like what you said, you kind of know what you're getting to an extent. And there's always this kind of backlash sometimes towards people who knowingly put themselves in a situation that might result in behavior like this and then be like, wait, no, I didn't want that. And it's okay, but what did you expect?
This is a tense segment. I'm throwing pens around. But no, I think about the internal tension in the organization, and it had to come up short of a crime being committed because an NDA doesn't legally cover crimes. If you commit a crime and you committed it against someone you have an NDA with, they can still go to the police, they can still get legal help, there's recourse there. And so it's really difficult because it sounds like something here happened that was very bad but doesn't rise to the level of crime, which makes me worried for every girl in this organization if they're sort of towing that line.
Yeah, there was one part of the report where they talked about the comments that were made about Miss USA internally. And apparently one of them was that the president was complaining that she was difficult to work with. And it's okay, well, if that's the extent of it, I've probably said half of my colleagues are difficult to work with. Not you, don't worry.
Amber, you're so difficult to work with.
I know, so I just can't stand working with Jessica. Me must away, viewers. But, yeah. I mean, the point is obviously that the accusations have to be taken on their merits, and we don't really know that much beyond sort of what the people who have resigned have said in very vague and like cryptic ways. So I hope that we get more reporting on what specifically was going on.
That does it for us. Thanks for tuning in this week. We'll be back next Friday.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Bye, y'all.